Here's the thing. Everybody can't be the boss. Everybody can't be at these apex positions. There should be a respect for all classes / castes. There used to be a time when there was, but now it's like everything's looked at as bad, right? Because people suffer from idealism. And I'm gonna blame, to an extent, the Greeks for this in democracy. I'm not a fan of democracy.
Really?
I'm not a fan of democracy. Let's say this is our civilization, right?
Okay.
Say there's 100 people. Who the fuck are these people to vote on anything? What do they know? Right?
Right.
Think about the average person. What do they know? I think it's bizarre for people to complain about certain things, like, say, for instance, school boards or cops or whatever, but they're not doing anything to participate in who's in those positions or lean on them for whatever, and they can. And it's a lot easier to get things done on that level than it is for a president. So these people are not educated in anything, yet they have all these opinions. We have television, news, or whatever, just literally programming you during election time, tugging at your emotions, because that's a very viable tactic for sales, right? And this is all sales. So they're making you upset with bad news, get you to side with whatever political side. And people have no practical information or understanding on politics at all to vote on anything.
Sure.
So a girl tried to bait me into that conversation. Her name was Pearl, just Pearly Things or whatever.
Yeah, Pearl Davis, of course.
Yeah, and it was a fun interview, but it'll never come out. Because it'll never come out. They'll never put it out. She didn't look too good in that. 'Cause I'm just a normal man I'm a normal man of my stature.
Sure.
And I'm a pure representation of it. I don't know what she thought I was. I don't know if she thought that this was a act, or she could I would like shit on women or whatever.
Yeah,
but
Pearl, she says a lot of like red pill dogma, and she expects men to like agree with her. But like in her agreeing with her, you're telling a woman she shouldn't be able to vote, which most of the time you would never do anyway.
She did that. She pulled that
of course,
up.
Of course.
And I said, I agree with her. I said, yeah. But men shouldn't vote either.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody should
right.
vote.
So she goes to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
And she does so. And I think there's some people, rightly or wrongly, feel like some of the things she does is disingenuous to just try to get attention. I like Pearl. She's been nothing but nice to me. Again, one of my best friends is Rollo Tomasi. Rollo can't stand Pearl. He can't stand Destiny. He can't stand some of these people. But for me, I'm trying to build a bridge for a lot of these people to have a discussion. But I can absolutely see you having a discussion with Pearl and them not wanting to produce it.
It was fun.
Yeah.
She brings up all of these statistics. I'm like, who funded these studies?
Yeah.
She's like, what?
Yeah.
Who funded these studies?
Right.
She doesn't know. 400 men polled. I wasn't polled, so I don't really. You can't just come to me with statistics.
Sure.
You know, here's the thing. If a person has a rational and a practical position on something, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. You are right for you. That's your own personal truth, right? That's the thing. That's the interesting thing about life. It's not black and white. There's a lot of nuance to everything.
Yeah.
And even with morality and ethics, it's not objective. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah, sure.
What's ethically correct to you or to me is very specific to our lives and who we have to take care of. Especially for a man, it's me first, my family, my tribe, my community, then everybody else after that. You know what I mean? And I think that's the correct position for all men who are in position to provide and protect. That's a divine duty. See, that's where morality should lie. Oh, back to the Greeks, this democracy thing. It's like, no, we're all fair. And if you really think about it, all of these rules were created by weaker men so they can have a shot. Which I understand that. I'm not opposed to that, but I'm like, don't get it fucked up. Y'all calm down sometimes. And here we are, right, in 2024 with our democracy, our robust democracy, and it's really weird. So here it is. If I love and want to provide for, protect, and take care of two women, legally I can't do it. But two men can legally get married.
Yeah.
And adopt children. Excuse me? Why? Because you assholes voted for it. I read a story about a man who sexually abused, sexually abused a child.
Yeah.
Sexually abused an adult female. Went to prison for both, got out, violated his conditions, and as he was going back, he became, in his mind, a woman, a transgender, and they put him in a female prison, and he abused women there.
Yeah.
Why? Because you assholes voted for it. Listen, I'm gonna tell you how deep that problem is. There should never be a sex offender registry. It shouldn't exist, because if you are a sex offender, you should never get out of prison. Period, point blank. There's no parole date. There's no this many years. Like you're done, right?
We're talking about assault. We're not talking about a couple that fucks in a public place, because they can be sex offenders.
That's not an offense.
Yeah, some people are sex offenders because
it's classless.
Yeah, I've seen one where a guy pisses behind a fucking.
That should be taken off of the sex.
Exactly.
That's silly. That's another thing. That's silly that you have something like physical violent assault on a woman is in the same category as a man pissing in public.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You idiots are voting. I'm not saying everybody, but there's idiots voting for goofy shit like this. I'm not mad at a dictatorship. 10 years, get everything back streamlined, and then y'all can go back and fuck it up in another 20, 30 years.
I've heard this idea before. There's actually a form of government where they had this, where you would elect a guy for 4 years, and then everything he said goes, and at the end they'd kill him. I think that was how it worked. And then another guy would get elected
kill
for
him,
4 years. I forgot what it was, but it was like he had 4 years where he was ultimate and complete rule, because it was like, I think the reason why is because it may have been some some ancestral tribe that did this, because the reason why was because at the end of his term, you knew that all he cared about was his tribe, because he's willing to give his life for it. Right. Does that make sense? And so I think that's why they did it. But there's other examples where somebody will have.
I don't necessarily. Let's figure out a council of people that we're assessing, we're scrutinizing. Like, these people seem okay, like they really want the advancement of our nation, and then they choose. And they scrutinize and they test and they do all of the things to try to determine a leader, a dictator, or whatever you want to call it, that, we think is going to have our best interests at heart. Maybe he's already coming with all of the things that he doesn't need the money or whatever the fuck. And we pick somebody out of that to really get us streamlined. And here's another issue, kind of good, but kind of bad with politics, is bureaucracy. Nothing ever changes. It takes forever. Everything is voted on by this guy, by that guy, by this feeling, that feeling, yay, nay, and nothing ever changes, which is somewhat of a good thing if you're thinking about tyrants, right? Yeah. Like tyrants running shit. They can't. Trump saw that when he was in office, that he couldn't get a lot of shit done. Correct. Because it's like, fuck, I can't get anything done. They're not voting for this, voting for that. So we don't have a nation of a king, right? It's by the people, but fuck, the people are weird. The people are doing some weird things. And I mentioned that thing earlier about the homosexual guys. I don't have an issue against gays. I just don't give a fuck. Yeah. I don't care what anybody chooses to do behind closed doors. I just don't want to see it. Yeah. I don't want to see straight people kissing in public either. Sure. I don't want to see none of that shit.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because if you go back and look at the Founding Fathers when they came up, originally the Federalist Papers, John Jay, Thomas Jefferson, and then later on the Constitution, when you go back and read it, if you really read it and look at it today, it's like if you really don't like Joe Biden, it actually protects you from Joe Biden, even though he's the president. 100%. And if you don't like Donald Trump, it protects you from Donald Trump. 100%. The point was having three branches of government was to create a quagmire so that government would move slowly and so that people could stop and say, hey, this goes against what the Constitution says. So a lot of times when you see the wrong person being elected, there are mechanisms in place from keeping things from just getting too far out of control. Even a great example would be the president can commit troops in a foreign war, but the Congress has to vote on it within 100 days and can pull funding for that war. And so even though the president is the commander in chief, the Congress and the Senate still handle the money. So there's all these mechanisms in place. And in that, it's brilliant because what our founding fathers understood was that men were flawed and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's why I was saying before, like for having a certain term to be able to do this, to clean these things up, it might work.
I think the initial framework was pretty legit. Right? Yeah. It was pretty legit. There was enough space in it for people who weren't considered free to eventually have freedom. Yeah. I mean, it was enough headspace for men to become women, right? Sure. So it is what it is. However, this is what we're 300-400 years later. It's a lot more people in this country. Yeah. It's time for revision. It's time to revisit these things. And it's interesting because people hold this thing as such a holy paper, this Constitution, right? But a lot of these systems and policies are not very constitutional. The framework of our country now, or the vibe of our country, is not what they set it up to be, a place that separated church and state, things of that nature. They openly say this is a Christian nation. that's not what they wanted. That's not what they intended. We need to have a sit down and let's rework this thing.
You know what? One of the things I do think is ingenious about our Constitution that makes us different from, like, say, Mexico. So there's in the United States, every chain of command has to end with a civilian. So, like, say in Pakistan, you actually had a general who was also president at the same time. That doesn't happen in the U.S.
Right.
The sitting general. But you also had the federal government could easily just trump the state police anytime they wanted to. In the United States, we have the 10th Amendment. So what you'll see is Texas did it right and California did it wrong. And what happened after that? What did we see? Anybody who lives in Texas, you know, hundreds of thousands of Californians leaving California to move to Texas because they screwed up when it came to their homeless problem, and they screwed up when it came to their taxation, and they elected the wrong guy to become their governor. And so because of that, I do like the fact that, like, Louisiana, Mississippi, like, these different places can try. It's 50 different experiments, including Puerto Rico, 51 different experiments that we can do to see this form of government works and this form of government doesn't. When DeSantis tried to reopen Florida during the pandemic, what should have happened, according to the liberals, is a massive flood of deaths that never ended up happening. And so we don't go back and then say, well, if DeSantis was correct, then what does that mean Newsom was doing? Like, and it's funny because we should, like, you as a conscious human should say, if DeSantis did this and it worked, then that means what Newsom was doing was defrauding you. And so, therefore, we should hold him accountable. But instead,
100%.
we're about to make him, like, if you guys know, if Biden steps down, Newsom's the front runner.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just one of these things where, like, I think one of the great things about this country is that you can move to a place. If you don't like the politics of Los Angeles, move to Orange County.
Exactly. You said 51 different experiments, but it's a lot more than that because within each state, people who don't know, you guys are so bent out of shape over the federal government. Fuck them. They have very little impact on your lives. You have your state, your county, your city, right? So it's, you know, each state has several governments within it, right? The fact that marijuana is legal here and not across the street, it should tell you a lot right there, right? There is a level of sovereignty to each district or city or county, but people don't realize that. They just ignore that and they just look at Biden, Trump, right? And I'm like this, like, yo, this is embarrassing. When I couldn't even watch the debate. It was not even entertaining. It was like, this is two old men arguing. Like, they're way too old. The energy's weird, right? Biden is literally too old, right? He's patched together. Trump, he's not even prepared. He knows that this guy can barely talk, right? It's like, nobody's impressive. Blow my socks off, right? I don't give a fuck if it's just rhetoric. Somebody come up here and be a good leader, a good representation.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah, the standards are very low now.
You have to think about this, right? So if you were to think of, like, a Colombian cartel, it's not that the guy who runs the cartel becomes a sociopath when he runs the cartel. It was because he was a sociopath that got him to that position. And so when you think about being president of the United States, what do you have to do? You have to pander to people to get money to get to that point. And when you think about politicians like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, they've given so many favors to so many people that finally at the end, Biden calls in all these favors that he's been given out since 1977 and goes, okay, now you're the president. And it's like, but it's too old. It's too late. He shouldn't have done it at this point. And then you look at Trump, which obviously, I mean, I think most of us would agree Trump would make a better president than Biden at this point. But we still have a guy who was, like, trying to impress a woman by showing her top secret documents so he could fuck. Do you guys remember that recording? Like, he did fuck Stormy. I know that during the debate they were talking about this, and I don't blame the president. You're having fun, and he fucked Stormy Daniels while his wife was pregnant. But he did fuck her. Like, she signed an NDA. She didn't sign an NDA because they played chess. Because they fucked. And he didn't pay her, by the way. He didn't pay her. He paid her to shut up. But, like, we have a president who's, filed for bankruptcy several times. I think Trump has a lot of great ideas, but it's like, and it's not that his ideas I don't like or him personally I don't like. My issue is, you're telling me there's 330 million people in this country,
This is the guy.
and this is the one you picked? You're telling me you could not have found a single 4-star general
why?
who has raised 4 kids, takes his, you know what I want? I want a guy who has been a general, run a $100 million company, and is willing to go downstairs with a shotgun to protect his family. Why can't that guy run for president?
Because democracy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's fair. Everyone gets to choose, right? So what you have is Trump won when he won because he's more popular.
Yeah, of course.
Straight away, right? The more you see somebody, the more you like them, you feel like you know them, they're speaking to you, they get it. Trump is funny. So let's talk about race and politics, right?
Yeah.
Traditionally, in very modern times, black people arbitrarily vote Democrat, and typically white people vote Republican.
Yes.
Typically, when there's a white Republican president, black people think he's racist, right? Typically, when there's a white Democratic president, black people think he's good for them. That's never the case. I'm not saying the racist part is not the case, but the Democrat being good for black people is never the case, ever. In fact, they have been extremely detrimental to black families from the 80s on up. Biden, Clinton, all of them, they've implemented some things that were just egregious, right? We can get into that in a minute, but this is what I want to talk about. So Trump, let's look at Trump. I'm one who can openly accept criticism or redirection, but I'm going to redirect myself if I find myself behaving in a way that's not what I look at as ideal or of a superior man's mentality. So I remember I'm agreeing with people like, yeah, Trump's a racist, fuck him. Then I had to say like, wait, why am I saying this? Let me do some research, right? And the things that they was putting on him to be racist, I'm like, okay. One of them was an interview that he did about Charlottesville, right? Lo and behold, I find the whole C-SPAN interview, not many views, 20,000 or so views. And what they chopped up and put out is not what he said.
Sure.
Right? He was just being political and like, look, there's good people that want to keep this fucking statue. There's good people that want to take it down. Everyone has a right to deal with it, to talk about it, right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said.
He said there's good people on both sides, and they took that out of context.
There's good people on this side.
Because that one woman got hit by a car the next day.
Yeah. So I watched him. I went down a rabbit hole. I watched him, like, just people just denounce the Ku Klux Klan. He's like, all right, I denounce him. You know, he said he did all the things over and over. Shit that I wouldn't have did. I'm like, fuck you, I ain't doing that, right? But he did it, right? Not only did he do it, he actually, as a president, he implemented policy that was actually good for black people, right? And it's only for political gain, but so what? I'll take it, right?
Yeah, if anyone thinks Lyndon Johnson loved Martin Luther King, you're a fool. Like, that wasn't happening either.
Who do you think is the original domestic terrorist in this country since the inception of this country?
I mean, if you really want to talk about, if you ask King George, his name is George Washington. That would be the original domestic terrorist.
The group. But you're right. But
what year were we talking about?
Yeah, the late 1700s.
Original domestic terrorists would be
Ku Klux Klan.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Nobody's touched them in 400 years.
Got it, yeah.
Trump classified them as a terrorist organization. Now, when a group has that tag on them, it's the worst of the worst.
Of course.
You go to jail under that tag, you're never getting out. Obama didn't touch that. Nobody touched that, right? But he did. He's not a good racist, right? This is a New York City billionaire that hangs out with famous people. He don't give a fuck about skin color.
And before 2008 was a Democrat.
But nobody's paying attention to these things. Nobody's even doing any due diligence, any research on these candidates. And then you pull a little string for Biden, it's egregious. He said overtly racist things. He said he don't want his children mixing in this jungle
environment. In 1977, he said, I do not want my children to go to school in this jungle environment.
He wanted to keep segregation strong.
He also said that homosexuals should not be able to have top secret government clearance. That is the Joe Biden you voted for.
And then his mentor, who just died a couple years ago, was like a grand wizard.
Yeah, Strom Thurmond, is that you're talking about?
Yeah. So this guy, fuck this guy, fuck Biden, right? 100, fuck him with a dog's dick, right? But anyway, nobody's doing any research. Nobody's doing their due diligence on these guys. I mean, it's not like the things that they're saying on TV right now is meaningful, is holding you. It's not satiating anybody, right? They're not saying shit. This is the problem with democracy. Y'all are being marketed to like low-level tactics, and you're basing your decision off that. You're not even basing your decision off of that. You're basing your decision off of who your family voted for, right? We're Democrats.
Most likely, yeah.
I don't even like the fact that people are so quick to put themselves in these red box, blue box. I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative. When we break down what these words really mean, none of y'all are any of these things. You feel me? So it's just words. It's just people talking, and words are changing meanings like rapidly, which is very problematic because we live in a civilized world in which there's rules and codes and words have meaning, but now they don't have meaning.
Yeah.
When people are talking and having discussions, they'll say, well, what this means to me, it shouldn't. Let's look this word up. Like I'm on that side, right? Let's be factual and exact so we're all on the same page. But for a person to say, like, I remember when Obama was in and I was a trainer, and I was training the girl. She's a friend of mine, and she's like, "Fuck him. He's gonna take our guns away. You know, I'm a conservative." I'm like, "You be fucking mad dudes. You're not a conservative." And I was like, I waited like a couple days. I'm like, "Hey, you ever go to the gun range?" Her name's, I ain't gonna say her name. She's like, "No." I'm like, "Oh." Because the other day you was talking about Obama taking the guns away. Like, you don't even have a gun. Like, why do you care? They don't care. It's avatars that they're voting for an idea. And these ideas are not even noble. This is what I tell black people to do. We are 14% of the population in America, right? Every political cycle, every election cycle, the margins of victory is 1 to 3%, give or take. Raise a thing. Whoever black people vote for is gonna win collectively. Black people need to be on code. I know y'all ain't, or we ain't, but we should be on code. We choose somebody. I'll take that responsibility to say, hey, here's the thing. America, we're not voting for anybody this cycle. So y'all can feel that impact. Y'all gonna feel it, right? So we let one pass when we don't participate. Now, next cycle, I'm gonna sit down with both sides. Whoever got the best promises for me that's gonna benefit people like me, we're gonna vote for you. But I need it in writing. We need contracts, all of the shit, right? I'm simplifying this, but this is a serious thing that could, at least for black people, because a lot of black people think that voting is all of that, right? It's only all of that if a group of people is on code. Now, here's the thing. What made Trump feel racist was strategies that had to be employed. If you're running for president, you better fucking win, right? You're gonna waste a lot of people's money, so let's win. So what works on that side, the Republican side? There are tactics of dog whistling, right?
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're going here. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you are racist, but you got to do what you got to do to get that base, right? So there's groups, there's religious groups, and there's white nationalist groups that have big numbers that can help you win an election.
Yeah.
And this was implemented by a man who was racist, Richard Nixon, but I don't give a fuck. Do what you got to do. I don't give a fuck. You're an old ass dude from that era. I expect you to be racist. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't bother me. But anyway, it was called the Southern strategy that he employed. It was brilliant because at that time when the Democrats, they were the super racist side. That was called, y'all can Google this, Democrats was called the party for the Ku Klux Klan.
Yes.
The party of the Ku Klux Klan, right? So the Democrats, right? So Martin Luther King was a Republican, just putting that out there. But I'm not like advocating either. So anyway, when it got to a point, because people over time get smarter and become more ethical and like, yo, this is not cool. So they had to abandon a lot of their rhetoric. They had to abandon the whole segregation thing. They had to abandon a lot of shit. So a lot of racist people were like, I don't know what to do. So Nixon had a brilliant strategy at like dog whistling to them to get them riled up. So that's why it feels like whoever's the president on the Republican side, it feels like they're racist. Because there's racist people that supporting them.
So I've explained this before. So we'll take Charlottesville, what happened there, and then also the situation. You remember where there were immigrants coming over the border and their children were being separated from them, and then there was discussion about how do we get the parents back with the children. And Donald Trump, I don't believe Donald Trump is racist. I don't think he hates anyone. But what I do believe is that he is aware that racist people vote for him. And so he knows there's words I can say to keep those people to continue to vote for me, while at the same time appealing to the base. And I don't think he did a great enough job of appealing to the base in the last election. I do think there were some instances where he went more conservative, and it didn't make sense. Like, you're the incumbent president and you're Republican. You need to start saying some like pseudo moderate liberal shit to get the middle to vote for you. And I don't feel like anyone could ever get through to him with that shit. And so when he said the stuff at Charlottesville, he didn't say like he didn't say it was good what happened, but he did say there were good people on both sides, which is something you would say if you knew that there were people who hated Jews and hated blacks who were voting for you and almost exclusively voting for you. And if you said those things, then you could at least keep their vote. And so that's what it felt like where he did that. But I don't think he internally is racist. I don't think you can be that gregarious, successful, extroverted, and have that many friends.
It's not good for business.
Of course, I watch him with Oprah Winfrey, and I'm like, they're genuinely friends. Like, I don't believe any of it was an issue. And again, Donald Trump was a Democrat up until 2008. He was raising money for Hillary Clinton before then. So it is one of these things that's really interesting when you see it. But yeah, from a political standpoint, when you have an incumbent president like that, you would expect him to go more towards the middle, and he didn't. And I feel like that kind of hurt him.
Well, that's because he's not a politician. So he doesn't have that polish, and he doesn't listen to anybody because he's his own man.
That is true. He doesn't listen to anybody. Click the link in the description and I'll send you an exclusive invite to my elite networking community where you can learn to date high quality women today.